Hey guys, tonight we step into a mystery so heavy with silence, even the trees seem to listen. A farmhouse slouched into a field of frost. Beyond it, the outline of a swing set clutches the wind, and a lone porch light glows like it's been waiting for someone to come home. But no one has, at least not in the way they should have. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The neighborhood feels ordinary at first glance. Picket fences a little chipped from sun, kids' chalk drawings half washed from the last rain, and front yards tamed into submission. You've seen streets like this before. Maybe you grew up on one, maybe you're still there. But the one thing you notice is the light, always on, day and night, like it's guarding something or mourning. You walk past houses like this, and they hum with routine. Dinner at 5, lights off by 10, sprinklers at 6. But this one, something's off. Not loud, just off. That's what neighbors would say later. No screaming, no noise, just silence that stretched a little too long, until one day it broke. The story begins not with a scream or a siren, but a knock. A child knocks on the neighbor's door. It's early morning, the sun not fully risen, and she's barefoot, clothes rumpled. Her skin is pale in a way that suggests more than fear. It suggests hunger. Her voice is soft, apologetic even. "My brother's in the back room," she says. "He's hurt. We need help." The neighbor, still in pajamas, opens the door and lets her in. She thinks it's just some sleepover gone wrong, but then she sees the girl's wrists. What comes next plays out slowly, like syrup dripping in cold air. The police report will later say that the girl had escaped, but that's a strange word when you're 12. When the place you ran from is your own home. This event, August 2023, becomes the turning point in what authorities later call an incident involving long-term endangerment. The mother, Ruby Franke, already had a sizable online presence. Known for her family vlog 8 Passengers, she offered parenting advice to millions. But offline, reality was crumbling. The moment the neighbor calls 911, the web starts to unravel. Officers arrive and find the girl's brother in the home next door, malnourished with visible injuries. They are in disbelief. And the mother? Not home. Not at first. For years, Ruby Franke's videos had shown tightly choreographed family routines, chore wheels, meal prepping, no snacks after 3 p.m. It was a brand of order that gained loyal fans, but also critics, many who had long felt something was off about the disciplinary methods shown. She once posted a video detailing how her child had lost bed privileges for months. Not video game privileges, bed privileges. He was made to sleep on a beanbag. That was natural consequence, she said. The internet called it harsh. She called it structure. The unresolved question still rattling. How long did people suspect something? How many watched those videos and said nothing? The audience wasn't passive. There were threads, forums, DM groups whispering concern. Yet nothing happened until the barefoot child walked out the door herself. It's a modern tragedy with a strange new villain. The algorithm. The porch light that always stayed on. It wasn't for safety. It was a rule. Lights must be kept on until all children finish homework. The swing set in the backyard was rarely used. It was a gift for a birthday. But that child had been grounded for 4 months. Ruby's YouTube banner once read, "Raising responsible adults." It echoes now like the punchline to a ghost story. You trace your steps through this quiet neighborhood where sidewalks never cracked and lawns stayed trim, where the silence wasn't peace, it was the sound of children holding their breath. And you wonder, how many homes are like this, lit from the inside, filmed for millions, but dark in all the ways that matter. You look back at the porch light. It still burns. It's just a bulb now, nothing more. But part of you wonders if it remembers. The screen fills with soft pastel tones, perfectly dressed children seated at a long wooden table. Laughter floats through the air, warm and practiced. The mother, Ruby, sits at the head, her hair pulled into a tight bun, her voice warm, almost sugary. She corrects her daughter's posture. She praises another child for cleaning without being asked. You're watching what millions saw. A moment in a home seemingly governed by love and responsibility. But then you look closer. The smiles never quite reach the children's eyes. The laughter has a strange echo, a hollowness you can't explain. The room, though staged with seasonal decorations, feels too neat, too symmetrical. Something about it unnerves you, the way a dream can be both familiar and wrong. What you're watching is a clip from the now-removed family channel, 8 Passengers. For years, Ruby Franke invited viewers into her family's life. She called it transparent parenting. The videos were daily vlogs of homework sessions, family meetings, chore enforcement, and disciplinary talks. Sometimes her husband, Kevin, appeared. Other times it was just Ruby and the children, the camera always rolling. Viewers, especially parents, were drawn to her tone, calm, structured, principled. Accountability builds character, she'd often say, staring into the lens like a confessional. It was her mantra, but the cracks were there, always. One of the first viral flags came from a 2020 video in which Ruby revealed she hadn't seen her oldest son in months. He'd been sent away alone to a wilderness behavioral camp. No contact, no updates. Her justification: he needed to feel the natural consequence of not being grateful. That single clip drew online backlash. Reddit threads formed, reaction videos surged. The question hung heavy: was this discipline or something more? But Ruby doubled down. In her world, discipline was a virtue. Harshness wasn't cruelty, it was preparation. One video, since scrubbed, showed Ruby confiscating her daughter's bedroom. For acting entitled, the child was made to sleep on the floor with no bedding. Ruby explained calmly that the child needed to feel what it's like to go without. In another clip, the kids shared a single granola bar as lunch. One daughter was told to earn back food through good behavior. No tears, no yelling, just cold logic and a disquieting calm. It wasn't horror in the classic sense. No screaming, no breaking plates, just smiles that weren't smiles, and lessons that felt more like punishment wrapped in a prayer. How much responsibility lies with the viewers? Tens of thousands of people watched those videos, comment sections filled with praise. Wish I had a mom like you. Others begged her to stop. YouTube took no action. Even when advocacy channels dissected her parenting, it never hit the threshold of dangerous content by platform standards. Was it manipulation, or just a parent with extreme methods? Was it abuse, or just very online discipline? When is a smile not protection, but camouflage? Ruby's most viewed video before the incident was titled, "When Your Child Doesn't Listen." It features her calmly explaining the importance of not negotiating with children. That video earned over 2 million views. In interviews, Ruby once described her parenting philosophy as divinely guided. One of her stated goals: to raise children who could endure hardship. A fan once mailed her a Mom of the Year mug. She unboxed it on camera and beamed. You scroll deeper. Thumbnail after thumbnail shows carefully arranged chaos. Children scrubbing countertops, packing lunches, folding laundry. Every moment documented. Every behavior corrected. The smile on Ruby's face never changes. It's warm, soft, matriarchal. But the deeper you look, the more it fractures. You realize it's not her smile. It's the performance of a role she's written herself into. And her children? Supporting characters in a production they never auditioned for. The footage feels endless, not because of runtime, but because of weight. Every second seems heavier in hindsight, like watching a magic trick when you already know where the trapdoor is. You hit pause. The frame freezes on a child mid-sentence, eyes glancing at the camera. You wonder, what was she trying to say? The house with too many rules. You push open the front door, and it resists, not from weight, but memory. Inside, there's no chaos, no clutter, just a kind of eerie stillness, like a museum without plaques. The living room is barren, no couch, no framed photos, no coffee table cluttered with crayons or cereal bowls. There are chairs, sure, but they're small and hard. School chairs, utility chairs, and in the corner, a camera stand, always ready. You step further in, and the air hits differently. Not stale, not fragrant, just absent. The house doesn't feel lived in, it feels performed in. This is the home where Ruby Franke and her business partner Jodi Hildebrandt ran their parenting structure training. Known online as advocates for moral discipline and truth alignment, they positioned themselves as healers, life coaches, guides. But their tools weren't words, they were restrictions, and those restrictions had rules. Pages of them. Rules about food, rules about movement, rules about apologies, earned affection, and what it meant to be deserving of warmth. When authorities entered the a home in late August 2023, following the 911 call from Ruby's daughter, they documented a living space shockingly sparse. Children were sleeping on beanbags or in rooms with no bedding. Food was restricted, earned through daily behavioral scoring. They found a handwritten chart with point systems, use of bathroom, small meal, permission to speak freely, and the rules weren't limited to inside the house. Reports suggest children were isolated for days, sometimes weeks, for minor infractions. One child reportedly lived in the garage for nearly a month. All of this was rationalized as character building, a moral cleanse, but the walls, they don't lie. They were thin and cold. Ruby and Jodi used a phrase repeatedly in their now defunct podcasts: distortion equals deception. They believed children naturally distort truth to gain sympathy and must be corrected back into honesty through structure, silence, and removal of comfort. One episode suggested that emotional wounds in children are signs of selfishness. They even developed a program template called the Reset Room, a glorified timeout strategy involving isolation and fasting. They claimed it produced moral clarity. To this day, it remains unclear how much of this was religious zeal, psychological ideology, or something else entirely. The partnership between Ruby and Jodi blurred personal and professional lines. Was Ruby following Jodi's teachings? Or had she found in Jodi the validation to express something already latent? Supporters argue they were misled. Critics claim they were collaborators in a system that traded love for doctrine. The deepest question lingers. How do two women, both mothers, justify treating children this way and convince others it's righteous? Ruby's living room once held a chalkboard labeled the Accountability Station. That space, where birthday gifts were revoked and privileges too. Allied was also where the family did their holiday gratitude letters. The pantry had a lock, not to protect food from pests, but from children. Snacks required permission slips. In one archived clip, Ruby jokes that her daughter should thank her for taking away her bed. It taught her appreciation. You move through the house slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet. But it's already been disturbed, hasn't it? This house wasn't a shelter. It was a system. A polished program of behavioral management masked as parenting. You pause near the fridge, locked with a small chain and padlock. Next to it, a whiteboard covered in reward columns, each child's name written in neat capital letters. There are tally marks, red and black. Some are erased, some are not. You imagine being 6 years old, staring at that board each morning, trying to calculate what kind of day you're allowed to have. The rules never made anyone feel safe. They made people disappear. And in this house, disappearing wasn't a tragedy. It was compliance. the confession, or something like it. You're not in the house anymore. You're in a courtroom that smells like dust and power. The lights above are too bright, the benches too hard, and everything feels sterile, except what's being said. Ruby Franke stands in the middle, flanked by attorneys. Her voice is calm, controlled. She doesn't cry. You expect something different, a breakdown, an apology, at least a note of shame. But instead, she talks like she's explaining a complicated recipe. Her tone is level. Her words are phrases you've heard before. Accountability, misalignment, truth distortion. It feels less like a confession and more like a lecture. There's a strange, collective discomfort in the courtroom. No gasps, no sobs. Just the kind of tension that fills a room when everyone knows something awful has happened, but no one can agree what to call it. Even now, Ruby doesn't use the language the world expects. She doesn't say pain or harm. Instead, she speaks of moral correction, of aligning children with higher truth. She uses the vocabulary of a prophet, confident, unwavering, lost in conviction. You realize she doesn't see herself as cruel. She sees herself as called. During her plea hearing, Ruby admitted to participating in the actions that led to the malnourishment and severe emotional trauma of 2 of her children. But she framed those actions through the lens of purpose. She claimed that by enforcing order, she was saving her children from the chaos of a morally broken world. Her co-defendant, Jodi Hildebrandt, echoed the sentiment in separate proceedings, referencing spiritual warfare and parental duty. The courtroom wasn't prepared for ideology cloaked in justification, the kind that turns harm into holy practice. In one statement, Ruby referred to her daughter's decision to escape as a spiritual rebellion, rather than a cry for help. She said, "It was her test. She passed. She found the truth by leaving it." That line, half parable, half denial, left the courtroom silent, not because it made sense, but because it sounded rehearsed, like something she'd said out loud to herself, over and over. To this day, the relationship between Ruby and Jodi remains heavily scrutinized. Many wonder, was this a case of mutual delusion, a dynamic of control, or something deeper, like radicalization through ideology masked as parenting advice? Jodi ran a counseling business that was repeatedly reported by former clients for extreme behavioral prescriptions. Yet she maintained a loyal following, especially among fundamentalist circles. How does a parenting coach become a co-architect of emotional confinement? And more chillingly, how many others are still following that blueprint? In the middle of the hearing, a clip resurfaced online of Ruby hosting a Truth Sunday livestream, where she told viewers, "If your child is crying, it means they're resisting growth." One courtroom reporter described Ruby's appearance as ethereal, not in beauty, but in detachment, like she was only half there, explaining someone else's choices. During cross-examination, Ruby corrected the prosecutor, not on a detail of the case, but on her child's behavior. He wasn't suffering, he was learning. There's a difference. You watch the testimony, and it feels like watching a ghost argue with its own reflection. She doesn't seem shaken, she doesn't seem defeated, she seems certain. And certainty is far more dangerous than chaos. Because chaos breaks things. Certainty builds cages you can't see. When the judge reads the charges, her face barely changes. But you notice one thing. A flicker in her eye when her daughter's name is mentioned. Not fear, not guilt. Something closer to offense. Like she still believes the child misunderstood the lesson. You step outside the courthouse as the hearing ends. The sky is the color of old paper. Nothing dramatic, just quiet. You hear someone mutter under their breath. How did we let this go on for so long? You don't have an answer. You're not sure anyone does. You return to the neighborhood. The porch light's still on. A gentle wind moves across the front yard, carrying with it the scent of something scorched long ago. Quiet, buried, but never quite gone. The lawn has grown a little wild now. No children's voices, no laughter, just the empty rhythm of a street trying to forget itself. But forgetting is a trick, isn't it? You stand in front of the house where it all began, again, and this time you see it not as a home, but as a monument, not to evil, not even to pain, to something harder to name, to what we sometimes accept in the name of love. The case is over, the sentencing done. Ruby Franke will serve time, so will Jodi Hildebrandt. The children are safe for now, in state custody, receiving therapy, rebuilding whatever childhood was left untouched. But you know this isn't really an ending, not in the way courts like to believe. Because what this case exposed wasn't just one family's tragedy, it was a blueprint, a system of belief delivered in vlogs, podcasts, downloadable programs, a lifestyle sold in pixels, polished and monetized. Major case detail. Since the arrests, a deeper investigation into Jodi Hildebrandt's business revealed she had been reported over a dozen times for unethical counseling practices, some dating back to 2012. But her connection with religious and parenting networks shielded her from full scrutiny. And Ruby, despite warning signs flagged by online viewers, she was never contacted by Child Protective Services. YouTube never intervened. Sponsors didn't pull out. Until a child ran barefoot into the street, the world simply watched. In the weeks after the case broke, a collection of Ruby's early blog posts resurfaced. In one, written before she ever uploaded a YouTube video, she wrote, "If I am ever remembered, I hope it's not as someone who was nice, but someone who was willing to do what was needed." It was meant as a mission statement, but read now, it feels like a eulogy to something colder. Unresolved controversy, and now 1,000 questions drift like ash. Should parenting content be monetized? Who decides when strict becomes cruel? Why didn't platforms act sooner? More urgently, how many other channels are doing the same thing right now and calling it structure? How many children are trapped inside algorithms optimized for family-friendly control? The original tagline of the 8 Passengers channel was, "Because family is everything." Ruby once hosted a Q&A titled, "What I Do When My Kids Disobey." It has since been re-uploaded, ironically by advocacy channels trying to raise awareness. One of the children, in a recent closed-door statement, was quoted as saying, "I thought that's what love looked like. Now I know it shouldn't hurt." You stand in the silence of that empty porch, staring up at the light that never turned off. And you wonder, not how this happened, but how many people saw it and moved on. Because this wasn't a story hidden in shadows. It was filmed, edited, uploaded, shared. And still, it took a child walking out the door, barefoot and hollow, for the world to ask, is this normal? Maybe the real question isn't what Ruby Franke did. It's what the rest of us called parenting, until it wasn't. You step back one last time. The porch light is still there, dim now, maybe dustier, but glowing all the same. A bulb that's burned so long it doesn't know how to rest. Maybe no one told it the story was over. Or maybe it knows better. You let your eyes drift across the neighborhood. Other houses glow faintly through their curtains. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. A swing creaks on an empty porch. It's all normal, the kind of quiet that tastes like sleep. But underneath that stillness is the truth that lingers long after courtrooms close. Some stories never really end. They echo, in policy changes, in whispered warnings, in the silent way a child flinches when a door closes too hard. The Ruby Franke scandal wasn't just one woman's dissent. It was a mirror, showing how tightly society clutches the illusion of control when love starts to fray. It asked, without speaking, how far would you go to make your child good? How much hurt could you wrap in discipline and still sleep at night? And most haunting of all, it showed us how long someone can hide in plain sight when they're smiling. Now the house stands still. The cameras are gone. The script's deleted. What's left is an echo, and in that echo, a lesson. Not in parenting, not in justice, in silence. Because sometimes what we don't say becomes the stage for the next tragedy. So tonight, wherever you are, whether it's 2 a.m. or dusk is just settling over your window, take a moment to listen. Really listen to the spaces in between, the noise, the pauses, the quiet looks. Sometimes the most important stories aren't screamed. They whisper, "Sweet dreams," and may your home always be a place where the light knows when to rest.